you guys, it's Grace, and today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. I finished a total of 8 books this month, which is kind of crazy and kind of amazing. I was on a bus for about 50 to 60 hours this month because it was a 28-hour bus ride there and back to Florida. So I'm just gonna jump right in and start talking about some of the amazing books I finished this month. The first book I finished is Caraball by Stephanie Garber. This feels like a really long time ago that I finished this book, but it was only about a month ago. This book follows a pair of sisters. Their names are Scarlet and Tella. I think it's short for Donatella or something. And they've always been fascinated with this thing called Caraball, which is basically this kind of game, and you have to find an object and then the winner gets a wish granted to them. So it's just kind of something fun like that. So the sisters decide they want to do this when they're younger, and they send letter after letter to Master Legend, who's kind of the boss of this game, and he never replies until the last letter, where Scarlet's finally just like, you know what, like, don't worry about it anymore. We're too old for this now. So he finally replies to that with tickets to this game. And I thought it was a very magical book. It kind of had a similar feel to me as Heartless by Marissa Meyer, except it didn't have the whole like evil queen ending. You know how obviously her story has to end. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a little slow in the beginning for me, and I was just like, okay, maybe kind of keep it going a little quicker, but I really started to get into it, and I really liked the characters, and I just thought it was a fun read. Next up, I finished The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I've been hearing amazing things about this book for a really long time, basically. And I believe it's 1001 Nights retelling sort of thing. And basically the Caliph of Khorasan, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but every night he takes a new bride, and then by morning they are dead with a cord wrapped around their neck. And the main character in this book, Shahrazad or Shazi, decides to kind of seek revenge for her best friend who was killed. It's kind of her trying to get revenge for her best friend's death, and then some things happen and it turns into a really awesome story. I fell in love with this story. I got really excited. I enjoyed this book more than I have enjoyed any book in a while. Yeah, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished is the sequel, The Rose and the Dagger by Renee Ahdieh as well. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 as well. I loved it. It was so much fun to read. I basically finished that one and I was like, alright, time to read this one. And I didn't have a lot of time to read while I was reading these, but I still managed to sneak in anytime I possibly could to read them because I just enjoyed them so much, and I honestly looked forward to reading these books every time I had time to read. So it was just a lot of fun. I highly recommend this. It's only a duology, so just read it. The next book I finished is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is a book I had to read for school. I wasn't a fan, honestly. I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars. I know it's like literature and like everyone should read this literature, and you know, it wasn't my thing. I thought it was kind of boring. I thought it was kind of offensive. I got annoyed because people in these books always like make stupid decisions, or they're like, they die of sadness. Okay. Or like they die of guilt. Okay. I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of this one, but that's okay. If you liked it, cool. That's for you. The next book I finished is The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid. This is a book I've kind of been looking forward to reading for a while, and I finally read it on the trip, so that was a lot of fun. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This book follows the main character nemesis, and she is a Diabolic, which means she was basically created to protect one person. They manufactured her to fight and to only truly love this one person, so her life would be before everyone else's lives. So she's basically like a glorified bodyguard. And anyway, Nemesis has to protect Sidonia, who is like a higher class member of society. And when Sidonia is tasked to go to this big like imperial ship thing, Nemesis goes in her place. So that's like the ultimate act of trying to protect Sidonia, is going in her place to this very dangerous event. So she has to just pretend to be someone she's not in order to protect her. And I thought it was really good. There were a couple parts that kind of were slow for me, and some of the characters were kind of frustrating to me, but all in all, I really liked it and gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished is Milk and Honey by Ruby Carr. This is a book that I've been seeing a lot of people talk about, both on BookTube and just like people in my school. I initially bought it because it was really short and it's written in like poems and there's like pictures and stuff. So I was like, oh, this book will probably be a really quick read. So one of my challenges for my 2017 reading challenge is to read a book in one day. So I got this one to read in one day and I ended up loving it. I thought it was so deep and it really like struck me on a spiritual level. I was just like, oh my gosh, like this book is real. There were some things I was like, okay, I don't really relate to that because, but like this book, it talks about love, it talks about how women are treated, it talks about heartbreak, it talks about healing from that heartbreak, and I just thought it was a very wonderful book, and I think any girl out there should read it, and even guys should read it because it helps you understand what we go through, and guys can go through some of the same things. So I just thought this was just a very, very influential book, and I will probably think about what it talks about for my whole life just because of how deep it was. I was reading it with one of my friends on the bus and we were both just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like I finished it and I was speechless for a good like 30 minutes. It was wonderful. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished is The Edge of Everything by Jeff Giles. This is a new release, I believe. It just came out in the past couple months. But it follows Zoe and her mom and brother, and one day there's a big storm, snowstorm kind of thing going on, and her brother and 2 dogs get lost. So she goes into the woods and is trying to find them, and they end up at her neighbor's house. And her neighbors were killed a few months before this, I believe. And this guy comes to the house and he's like trying to steal the dogs, and he's like saying all these weird things about his past and all this stuff. And this guy named X ends up showing up and kind of saving her. But the reason he saved her is because he was tasked with killing the man that was trying to hurt her dogs and her brother and like all this stuff. So it's really weird. So he's basically like an assassin for bad people, and he takes them back to like the underworld where they live in eternal punishment, punishing other people. And it was really cool. I thought it was a really cool book. It kind of like, I've heard people say it's a mix between like a contemporary and a fantasy, and I was kind of getting the same vibe because Zoe's life takes place in like normal society, like a pretty contemporary world, until these random people show up and kind of like drag her into this crazy world. And then so you get parts of it from like a regular perspective, and then parts of it you're down with X and you're learning all about his people and all this stuff. So it was really interesting. I think it's kind of a hard book to explain, and it's definitely a book that's really fun to go into not knowing a whole lot. So that's all I'm gonna say. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, the next book and final book I finished in March is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This book was beautiful. Just like Everything, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was very beautiful, and the characters were just relatable and just wonderful characters. It follows two people mostly. There's Natasha, who is a Jamaican immigrant, or she came illegally to the United States from Jamaica, and her dad got drunk one night and he spewed the whole story to the police, and now they're being deported. And it's her last day in the US, so she's doing all she can to kind of try to fix it and get so she can stay in the United States. So you're following her in her crazy day. And then there's also Daniel, who is a Korean American person. He's living in the United States with his family, and they own a black hair care salon, and he kind of is at odds with his brother because his brother just doesn't want the Korean part of his ancestry. Like, he doesn't speak his language with his family, he doesn't like eating their food, he just wants to pretend that he never had anything to do with Korea. So anyway, during their appointments, like, Daniel is going to an appointment to get into a school, prestigious school. Is it Yale? I honestly don't remember what school it is. But he's going to an appointment to meet with someone and have an interview, and that will largely determine if he gets into the school or not. And while Natasha is going and trying to figure out if she can stay and talk to like lawyers or whoever can help her, they meet, and it's kind of like a really chance meeting, and then they start talking, and it's just really cute. I thought, like, there in some ways it was kind of like cliche and a little unrealistic, but I did enjoy it a lot. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and just Nicola Yoon is a very talented author. I have loved both the books I've read by her, and I'm looking forward to any more work she puts out in the future. Okay, that was a really long wrap up. I'm exhausted. I've been sick for the past week, and today's the first day where I've actually been able to talk semi-normally and have had enough energy to do this, so that's why it's a few days late. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am really excited to share all those with you because they were some pretty good books this month. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment below which one of the books I read this month you would be most interested in reading, or if you have read them, let me know what you thought. And also subscribe to my channel so you never miss another video. I'll see you next time. Bye!